Ready to start. All right. Okay.
Okay, so homeopathic remedies are made out of plants, animals, and minerals. So we take the energy of those elements
Well, let
to.
me first start by proposing the question
Okay,
to our audience.
sure.
We wanted to enter into a conversation to talk about the different modalities that we have in health and healing. And each of us here dabble and have a little bit more of an expertise in different areas. So we have Dr. Fuente and Dr. Delaney who have a lot of experience in homeopathy. I'm definitely more of a dabbler than a proficient person when it comes to homeopathy. And then we have the modality of herbalism, our ordinary herbs. And then we have the modality of supplements. Then we also have the modality of essential oils. We also have the modality of Bach flower essence, you know, and things of that nature. So I wanted to have a discussion tonight about when you would use what modalities, because I'm sure that people are looking at all of, and then also foods, you know. So when would you use what modalities in what type of situations and things of, and what has your experience been in terms of balancing all of these different aspects? Because I know it's not that we're talking about using things exclusively, because I don't think that any of us uses any one modality exclusively. But I think in my mind, there's a hierarchy of when I think I use different things in different situations. So I'm going to throw it to Dr. Quante first.
Okay, so as a homeopath, of course, I do rather use homeopathy, but I also use the other things except Bach flowers. Why? Because even though it's made with the homeopathic uh, like the same process,
Process.
but it only goes to the emotion parts. It only helps you heal the emotional part, and it doesn't do anything to your body, to a physical symptom. So that's why I prefer homeopathy, because you treat like the combo, because
Mhm.
we're a whole, we're a body and a mind and an emotion. So that's better for me to work like comprehensive. And as I was saying before you said the question, homeopathic remedies are made out of animal, plants, and minerals. They take the energy of those elements to balance our own energy to go back to health. Okay.
Mhm.
So I always prefer homeopathy, but when I see that the patient can overcome the situation just with food, of course I'll tell them that food is the what they need. I also prefer to use food first instead of supplements, because I think that the vitamins, the minerals that are like in the fruit, in the beans, in the rice, in the whatever, is going to absorb better than the ones in a supplement. But sometimes I give supplements when the patient needs it. Maybe the patient has anemia and has a low iron, so maybe it's not enough with the meat or the beans or the beets or whatever. So that patient is going to need a supplement with iron to get that anemia better and faster. Or if that person is having a surgery, of course, we want to heal that part faster. And then essential oils, of course, they're amazing. I like to use them in kids, especially because sometimes kids don't want to take medication. And well, of course, they like homeopathy because it's like sugary and they think it's candy.
They
But
love
it's
it.
also a nice way to make an approach to health, just to put the oil so all the family can get the benefits of it. So I like to use them all, and it depends on the acute symptoms. that the patient is having. And of course, on the sense of if the person is very sensitive or very sensible, maybe it can heal faster from one way or another. And we always have to check how the patient reacts to one or the other, because we're all different. Some will react faster with homeopathy, some will react faster with an essential oil, and some will react faster with chicken noodle. So we'll have to try.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you use any kind of oh gosh, I'm I'm having one of those brain fart moments. What I'm thinking of is the testing. So, when you do the muscle testing, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do any kind of muscle testing to determine what would be the better modality to use with an individual?
Sometimes, not always. If the patient is open and knows about energy testing, muscle testing, kinesiology, I do it. If not, then I'll use my intuition.
Mm,
Mhm.
I love that. We haven't even put that one into the equation. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about your intuition. How do you come about that? How does that work? Because some people are like looking at you like, what do you mean by intuition?
Well, intuition is like the first thing that comes to your mind that's perfect for that person. And sometimes it's like, why did I even think of that remedy? Or why did I even think of that diet or that idea? Because we always have these, I don't know, it's not channeling, but we always have help from wherever you want, from the angels, from the universe, from whoever. And
Mhm.
but we're not ready to listen, or we are not willing to listen. But if
Mm,
we're open to listen and let our intuition to tell us what to do, it will always work.
I love that you say that, especially in the realm of the conversations that we've been entering into as a society recently with regards to AI. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but they've been pushing people to in that direction of, we're going to have medical providers, that are going to be in AI. And even I was watching another show where this woman was talking about using an AI therapist. And I was like, oh my God, Jesus, help me, you know. And it is just amazing that there's this push. And so according to the statistics and the studies, the AI is like more accurate with their diagnostic skills and blah 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 yak yak yak. And what I keep on thinking with inside of me is nah, because of exactly what you said, which is there's just something in the relationship between a healthcare provider and the individual. And to me, the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about is the spirit. Whether or not you want to label that as Scooby Doo or Allah or God or Yeshua, whatever it is, there is there is that aspect that connects all of us with I would say the common matrix, the common wisdom
Mhm.
that is just tapped into the infinity of the world, you know. But that's just me with my crazy woo-woo self. Dr. Delaney, what are your thoughts?
Well, I, like Dr. Huente, used a combination. And I really believe that diet is the foundation of our health, and that we've been so skewed to this low fat, no fat, don't eat meat, don't eat this, don't eat that. And I try and keep it simple as possible, but the main thing is getting people off processed foods and
Mm,
processed oils and sugar. But everybody in my practice mainly gets, well, it's a really good review of systems and getting to know your patient really well. A homeopathic interview, I just don't think you can beat that, because you are looking at, it's really whole person health. You're looking at their mental and emotional how they respond to the world in that realm. Are they hot? Are they cold? Do they cold water, ice, things like that? The homeopathic interview is pretty thorough, I think. And then I used, there are a lot of companies that actually use make food-based vitamins. And so you can use those in their lower dose to help support the energy of your clients as well. But I feel like those things are important because people can get very depleted.
Mm.
And then it feels sometimes like this homeopathic remedy should work, but it's giving it to a horse that's can't get up. Do you
Yeah.
know, feeling that? And so, but I always give mostly homeopathic remedies and always to children. You
Mm.
really can't give them supplements. They're not
Mhm.
swallowing those things. They're
Mhm.
not liquids. And we'll give some herbal like glycerites or something like that for coughs and colds, particularly in acute situations, but mostly constitutionally, because I had 2 children in today, and it's one thing to make their cough that's happening every 2 weeks go away and keep making it going away, to
Mhm.
make the cough just, their health improves so they no longer have to be treated for coughs. That's what I
Mhm.
love about homeopathy, is that it's a shift in their state of health. And so I kind of describe it like your health is like you're on a skateboard, okay? And most of the time, you know what to do to kind of keep yourself in balance, but
Mhm.
sometimes you're just leaning too far over, and sometimes you fall off your skateboard, and that's when you need help. But that leaning too far over, like this 2-year-old was constantly having coughs, and so my goal was not to treat just his cough acutely, but to give him a remedy that addressed his whole being so that he would no longer have coughs
Yeah.
and ear infections.
One of the ways that I usually explain homeopathy to people is that it's a subtle reminder to the divine design wisdom that lies within each of us.
Mhm.
So I believe each of us was divinely designed with a self-repairing mechanism.
That's right. We call it
It's just,
homeostasis.
yeah, exactly. It's just
Mhm.
that sometimes we forget. Sometimes something has happened to the programming or some little bug has gotten into the program. And so that divine design is kind of off track and
Yeah.
it's kind of forgotten how it's supposed to do what it actually is able to do. And
Mhm.
so that's what homeopathy does. It reminds that innate system, hey, remember, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is how you're supposed to deal with this situation. So I say there's that. If there has been a program interruption or a program erasure, that's where the homeopathy comes in.
Mhm.
And what I tell people is that you have to balance that with whether or not there is a deficiency of resources. So
Mhm.
homeopathy cannot operate if there's a deficiency of resources. So
Well,
you can have that blueprint and that plan, but if you don't have the lumber, you don't have the nails, nothing's going to happen.
mhm.
And so what I've shared with people is that around when I started working with people around 25 years ago, I found that I was able to jump in and utilize homeopathy from the very beginning of working with someone.
Mhm.
And I could see that shift right away.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that as time has passed and we've come to the current landscape, I find that I can't jump in with homeopathy right away because people are so depleted. It's like there's like no lumber, there are no nails, there are no cement blocks, there's like nothing. And so just getting the program online is not sufficient.
Right.
And so, like you said, Dr. Delaney, it's starting off with just basic food because people today do not eat food. We eat consumables that, it's just kind of stuff to fill up our guts. And on a good day, it doesn't further escalate the disease process, but most of the time it is. It's not even a neutral agent. It's something
Mhm.
that actually pulls the body in the reverse direction, which is even
Yeah.
more scary. It would be one thing if it were just neutral,
Yeah.
but today's consumables are worse than that. They actually pull people into the other direction. So, as you said, Dr. Quante, the first thing is getting people off the processed food and all the junk and as you said, Dr. Delaney, the crappy oils and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And then just introducing like actual food. you know, long before we start even thinking about things like supplements or herbs or whatever it is, because if we're not getting people back to the basics, then all the homeopathy, all the herbs, all the Bach flower, all the essential oils in the world will just be a band-aid, but we're constantly recreating the hole in the boat. So you're not really going to get anywhere with it. But what I have noticed is that it's a challenge because what we're talking about as the first stage is where people have to come into the journey and ask the question, am I willing to change myself?
Yeah.
See, taking supplements, taking homeopathic remedies, taking herbs, taking any of those things do not require anyone to change.
Mhm.
And what I say to people, well, rather, what I ask people is, do you want a cure or do you want to heal? See, a cure doesn't require your participation. So you go into the medical doctors and they give you a cure, or you take an herb and you think that it quote unquote cures, whatever it is. But healing is one that requires your participation. You have to decide whether or not you are going to let go of certain things, add on other things, transform your thoughts, your belief patterns, in order for the body, mind, heart, and spirit to actually heal. That cannot be done by an external agent. Healing is not an external upon the person. Healing is a cooperative dance that allows us to grow in recognition of our true selves and our true nature. And that's the challenge because we live in a society where we're so used to this concept of someone or something is going to fix me. And I shouldn't have to do anything. I shouldn't have to make any changes. I shouldn't have to sacrifice anything. And that, I believe, is the biggest challenge when we get into this dance of health and healing.
Yeah, I'll say something about it for people that to ask them to change their patterns or habits around exercise seems to be a very big one too. And
Movement, yeah.
so recently I had this patient and I said, well, let's just start with 15 minutes of walking every day in the morning. And there was a pause and she goes, well, could we say 15 minutes every other day? And I'm like laughing. I'm not laughing at her with her, but just kind of like, that didn't seem like a big ask, the 15 minutes in the morning. That was a place I was going to start. I said, sure, let's just start every other day. But it hasn't happened yet. You know, there's this really intense resistance. So it's not just eating, it is moving. And I think exercise is so key to our health. We sit, computerized, we're hunched, and we we're not built for that. We're just not built that way. The other thing is that people are missing is sunshine and fresh
Oh,
air
yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
walking on the ground. So
Yeah.
just those basic things as well
And I
as
love that you bring up sunshine because, again, it even feeds into this reductionist mentality that we have. So if we do a test with someone and the test comes back vitamin D deficient, the first thing that most people are going to think is, oh, let me go take a vitamin D supplement. And I'm like, no, let's go out and get some sunshine, get some fresh air, you know. And it's amazing to me because people don't understand, and it's up to us to communicate this, that the idea of a vitamin D deficiency is not simply the vitamin D. It's all the other things that combine in terms of going outside, getting the sunshine on our skin, walking, getting the air. All of those things are way more beneficial and cost effective than
Just
popping
a
a
pill.
vitamin D supplement.
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's like, and that's the irony, because on one hand, people will say, you know what, I don't really have a lot of money to take supplements. And so then, because I usually ask people, okay, what is your budget? Because all of us deal with people that aren't millionaires. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And it's a very important factor for us to consider when we are working with someone to create a plan that is more likely of being completed. And so what I say to people is, look, if you want to do this in a cost-effective manner, then that means that you're going to have to pay the price in another way. No matter how you slice it, you're going to have to pay the price. And it's just a matter of a trade-off. You know, so if you are a lazy bum and you don't want to do anything with your life, then you're going to have to take 50 million supplements that cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. If you're willing to make a couple of personal changes, then that bill kind of goes down. The more you are willing to make changes, the more that bill goes down, and you get a phenomenal better return on your investment. Because, as you said, exercising, going out into the sunshine, getting sleep, drinking water, these are things that are minimal in monetary expense, and yet the return is phenomenal. So how do you deal with that, Dr. Huante? How do you communicate that?
Oh, I think it's
Your
very
magic
hard
secret
because
sauce.
it's just that people want a quick fix.
Yeah.
They want something to feel better right now. They don't see the whole picture. They don't see that if they have a good diet with lots of fruits and veggies and nuts and coconut oil and olive oil, it's going to have an impact, not just for their health today, but for their health for the whole life, for 80s, 90s, 100 years, or I don't know. And if they live in a blue zone, more. But they just want something to feel better today. So it's a real challenge for us, for the people who are in the health environment, to teach them that you don't have to do things for today. You have to do the things for your life to improve your health for your whole life. So you can have a healthy, a longer life, a happier life, and that you also give this knowledge to your family, to your kids, to your grandkids. So it's not about just one person with one health condition. We have to impact to all the community to have a real healthy planet. Otherwise, that's the problems we're facing: obesity, diabetes, and heart attacks, and cancer, and stuff like that. So we need to figure out how to impact in their minds and in their conscious, so they get the idea that it's not just a quick fix, it's a change in their style of life.
Mhm.
Dr. Delaney?
Oh, how do I convince people?
Yeah, what's your secret sauce?
Well, it just depends. So like, teenagers, uh, they can be challenging. And I do talk to them about their diet and stopping their soda, that can contribute to osteoporosis, 2 drinks a day. Well, give them osteoporosis. Of course, they don't really care about when they turn 60. That seems like eons later. But I try to find the most motivating factor for teenagers. Like, they're very interested in not having acne. And so changing their diet to get off that sugar and the bad food, then they begin to see, oh, these are inflammatory. So I'm looking for the thing that will motivate people the most. Or young kids, they want to change their behavior because they want to be taller. They don't want to be shrimps anymore. They want to get taller and be the same height as their kids. And adults, it really happens. So I'll tell you a failure of one of my clients years ago. I didn't even know it, but I asked her to stop drinking for a month just to see what it felt like. And she never came back to see me. So I learned a lot from that. And one is just like,
Scared her away, huh?
what?
You scared her away.
Well, I just wanted to try it for a month. And or maybe I asked her to drink 1 drink a day for a month. But she was drinking way too much, like a bottle of wine every day. So she wasn't
Wow.
ready. But so I'm trying to find that place of negotiation, then what will work for them to do. Say, and they pick it out. Like, well, let's have those 4 drinks on the weekends, or see how it goes at 1 drink every day. You kind of got to go where they are. And I do use the slow, simple method of exercise, even though that patient only wants to go every other day. I want to find the thing that's most fun for them. What's really fun for you to exercise? And sometimes I don't get any answers, but they maybe want to go walking with their buddies in the neighborhood, or maybe they thought about taking that Zumba class. And I keep little, oh, here's a weightlifting class you can do online, $60 for the rest of your life. That's all you have to pay. And you keep getting the same thing. Or yoga classes online. Just fill them with kind of ideas, but then try and let them take the reins of what they're willing to do, and start slow.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. Here's another not so great story. So well, it was great in the beginning. I think talking about our failures is a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
So this guy comes to me, and actually he lives in New York at the time, and he has a hemoglobin A1C. He just found out because the surgeon said, "Oh, we're not doing that surgery. Your hemoglobin A1C is 11." And so he said, "You got to go on drugs and insulin and blah, blah, blah." So I changed his diet, put him on some herbs, got down to 6 over 3 to 6 months. He was thrilled. And so I didn't hear from him for 3 to 4 years. And I recently heard from him, and he had sort of a disaster. Basically, his blood sugar was so high in the middle night he passed out, dehydrated and whatnot. And his hemoglobin A1C was 15.4. I didn't know it went up that high. So anyway, we went back on the protocol, but I asked him what happened, and he just goes, "Well, it was so convenient just to cut a bagel and put cream cheese on it." And it's like they even make the line for you in that bagel. I'm going to help you cut it. And then after a while, he admitted to me, well, I also eat a pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream every single night. I went, oh, it's just convenient. Um, and he said I didn't feel bad. So that was a lesson for me to realize that people can have a lot of blood sugar issues and not feel bad. But once he really knew what he was doing, and I had talked to him multiple times about this is going to affect your kidneys and heart attacks in your eyes. And I guess some days it just goes in one ear and out the other, or I know how to fix this, but I don't want to do it right now. I want Haagen-Dazs every night. So human
Yeah.
behavior is surprising a little bit, but he's back on track now. So I
And
think it's a lesson for him.
you brought up a really important, well, a lot of important points, both of you. And one of the things that I look to tap into is, what is your why?
Yeah.
What it is that you value more so than anything else? Or in other words, what is your currency? So, when we talk about teens, sometimes I literally had to bribe my daughter to do certain things. Like, when you have children, you give them an allowance for X, Y, and Z. So I
Mhm.
had one daughter where her allowance was tied to her doing certain things with regards to her health. That's how
Uh-huh.
she got her allowance. As opposed to doing a chore, it was like, okay, if you did this, this, and this, and this, then you will get your allowance for the week. You
That's
know, so it's the same. And I've even said that with different parents that I've worked with, because in the Walsh protocol, a lot of times we're dealing with teenagers,
right.
that are dealing with, either well, the ones that I've dealt with, say the schizophrenic or the ADD or the depression or the anxiety, whatever it is. And I said, say to the parents, you have to enter into negotiation, and you
Uh-huh.
have to say to yourself, what is the currency? So it may be the currency is, in order for you to use the car, you will have to do X, Y, and Z, and to create a contract with that individual. So it's the same thing when we're dealing with adults, but it shifts in terms of the currency. The currency may be, I want to be able to play with my grandchildren,
Yes.
or the currency may be, I want to be able to go to my daughter's wedding,
Mm-hmm.
or the currency may be, I want to be able to continue to take care of my husband. You know, we have to figure out what is it that means a lot to that person. And I've found, especially with women, that a lot of times we won't do stuff for ourselves, but if we reframe it and say, do you want to be here to be able to take care of your son? Or do you want to be here to be able to take care of your grandchildren? Then it's like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that gives me the motivation to do something. Or I remember there was a woman that came to me when I first started 25 years ago. She was like my first client, and she had progressed breast cancer, and it had metastasized to her bones. And she was working with me, and she said, Michelle, one of the most important things for me is to be a role model for my daughter. And she said, I realize that I'm not going to survive this, but I want her to get this message. I want her to see me doing things that are going to help my overall health, even though I'm at a certain stage. And so she became we used to have a women's group, and she became one of the most active people and most inspiring people in that group. And over time, her daughter started to come to the group, and her daughter brought the granddaughter to the group. And that, even now that I'm just talking about it, it's bringing chills to me, because at the end of the day, that's what motivates me to keep my health in a certain way, because it's not really about me so much as it is, I want to be an inspiration to other people. I want to be that kind of light in the middle of the dark. And I think that's one of the reasons why I cautioned people as we have looked at the MAHA movement and looked at RFK and all of these things. And I say, you know, as a society, we keep looking for a savior. And the reality is that no one can save us.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's actually disempowering to think that RFK or MAHA or whomever it is going to do whatever. I say the biggest difference that you can make is in your own life and in the life of the people that are around you, and to create that sense of community and to shift on that level. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. So to me, it doesn't make a difference if Kennedy's successful in banning X, Y, and Z. Because guess what? I can choose not to consume any of those things. At the end of the day. And I feel that part of where we have a problem is that we think that it's going to be from the top down. And I think people are now coming to the realization that that's unrealistic, because the powers that be, quote unquote, big pharma, big ag, whatever it is, they're not going to allow that. But if we at the bottom make certain choices because they're greedy, because they want money, they will make certain changes if we just say, you know what, I'm not going to buy those Fruit Loops. So forget about, going out there and look at what happened with Budweiser. That I love the story of Budweiser. It is the most empowering study that we can look at. They didn't go out there petition for, big government to change the can. They just said, you know what, we're not going to buy Budweiser. And the stock plummeted, and Budweiser had that aha moment of, oh crap, we want people to buy our product, so we're going to make this change. And I think the same is true with all the other areas. So I guess my big story is that this is so powerful, what we're talking about today, in terms of recognizing the power that we have to transform our lives in the little things that make a significant impact. In one of my former lives, I was a math teacher. And in mathematics, you have angles. And as you know, an angle has a very small vertex. And you can have an angle that is just, say, like 1 degree. But as you go further out, it has a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger impact. And so what I say, people, is just make a 1 degree shift. So going back to your story about the walking, I used to have a woman, like 2 things. I had one woman, she could not even conceive of the idea of drinking water. So usually when you talk to people, you say, you know what, you need to drink X amount of water, say 3 cups, 4 cups, whatever it is. This woman, she had such an aversion to water, she would just gag. So I literally had to start her out with drinking a tablespoon of water. Wow. And you may say, well, whoa, Michelle, that's like really cray-cray. No, we literally had to start off with drinking a tablespoon of water a day. And then we went up to like 2 tablespoons. And it's interesting because as time went by, it started to reactivate that sensation of thirst, because she was never thirsty. But that little bit of water started to reactivate that gauge within her. And slowly and slowly and slowly, like I said, from that little angle, it started to get bigger and bigger and bigger until she was able to drink a couple of cups of water. And I remember another woman, it was about getting her moving. So I said, okay, do you like to go shopping? She's like, yes, Michelle, I'd like to go shopping. And so we had a little Walmart in town. So I said, okay, guess what? I'm going to give you permission to go to Walmart. But here's the catch. You got to push that shopping cart and you can't stop. And so that's what she would do. She would go to Walmart and she would push that shopping cart, have conversations with people and things of that nature. And little by little, she got her walking in because I knew she loved to shop. And I said, the fact that you can't stop is for two reasons, because I need you to keep going. And number two, I don't want you to break your budget. So, so that's the only requirement is when you go, this is different from when you go shopping. You just got to keep pushing that shopping cart, and to make it accessible, like you said, and fun, and to meet people where they are. Your thoughts, ladies?
Well, we always have to be creative, like you just have been with every single patient, with every single client that we have, because they all have different experiences and we have to respect them on their beliefs, on their experiences, on their process. And we have to be able to connect with them and guide them through the path that will suit them better so they can get health.
And, to bring it back to where we started this conversation in terms of homeopathy versus herbs versus essential oils versus food versus supplements, and even versus medication, because there's a time and a place for everything under the heavens. I love what you're saying in terms of really taking that time to connect your spirit to their spirit, to see not only what is it that they need, but also what is it that they want. Because sometimes we have to generate the want. You can see what people need, but they haven't quite figured out that because it's what they need, that they should also want it. And so it's like we have that tightrope of, okay, I know what you need, and how can I get from here to there? And that's where we start to utilize all of these different modalities in terms of what are they most receptive to, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Because if they're not receptive to something, then it's not going to work. Even though it technically, quote unquote, should, it's not going to work if they're not receptive to it. And so that's that dance that we have to play, And I don't know, sometimes I consider it, I love puzzles. So, and I, like I said, I was a math teacher and I always loved figuring things out, so I always enter into something saying, now, God, how can I best meet this person where they are? What is it that they need more than anything? And sometimes it's challenging for me because it's like, you look at someone's profile and you're like, oh my God, they need this. And then you have to like pump the brakes, like, Michelle, let's just back up out of that. And let's just think about what's the one thing that they need more than anything else. And sometimes, ironically, it could be to do nothing.
Or sometimes it could be they just want to be heard.
That's what I'm saying, to do nothing. Isn't that crazy? Because sometimes as I've spoken with people, they start to recognize for themselves, they'll start to say, you know what? Maybe it's just that I need to walk some more. And I go, that sounds like a good idea, And that is my best time. I love when people start to see those things for themselves. And you're just like, That sounds like a good idea. Why don't you try that out? Wow, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
So, ladies, what is the one thing that you would like to leave people with tonight?
Well, I would like for people to know that their health is their greatest treasure in their life. And as part of that treasure, I want them to engage in taking care of that in themselves. I really do. It's that self-responsibility. And I have this saying is, your health is no big thing, but it's a million little things. And keeping that in mind, and that your health is your greatest treasure. And sometimes people don't realize that until they're starting to lose it, or they have lost it and have stage 4 cancer. So that's what I would leave them with.
Dr. Monte?
Oh, I loved what Dr. Delaney just said. But I would just add that to keep that treasure, there are different ways and different paths, and we all can look for the best path to get there, to get this healthy treasure, this healthy place. And to get there, I think our intuition is our best voice.
About that.
Yeah.
And to add to that, the concept of Achman's razor, which is simplicity is king. You know, I think that we live in a world that gives us the messaging that it's complex and you have to have a PhD to figure out, things. And what I've come to realize is if it's complicated, it probably isn't what needs to happen. That sometimes it's about simplicity. And it's about realizing that each of us really and truly know within the depths of ourselves what the next best move is. And sometimes we're just looking to our healthcare providers to give us confirmation and to give us support and motivation and acknowledgement. Because at the end of the day, it's not the $1 million thing that's going to give you healing. As you said, Dr. Delaney, it's the small things.
Yeah.
It's not the bright, shiny objects.
Mm-hmm.
It's the small things that are priceless when it comes to our health.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gents, until next time,